Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel and to this, the second video of the Order of the Orders of Aphalas. And now we are focusing on the order that probably holds the most fame throughout the world of Aphalas, the Temple Guard of Glearia. The temple, well, actually a little bit of history first to this. The temples of Glearia and Naros, as well as some other locations such as the Spire Aphalas Tenir, over here and over here respectively, they all came to existence around the same time, serving as bastions and guardings of Destinal, the Twin Isles, and Shah. And there are notable areas in the other lands as well that are yet to be revealed in the lore, so they will not be getting focused on today. But the Temple Guard of Glearia are arguably the most significant. First of all, the entire terrain of the temple lands and everything, as you can see, is very hilly, very mountainous. It's got cliffs and everything, so any assault from land is incredibly limited. In the first Aphalas book, a little bit spoiler here, but Begador talks to Rand about the nature of how only dragons could necessarily get there from the mainland, but anyone else would have to come essentially on board via sea. There are routes that individuals can take, but full armies would never be able to break through. The Temple Guard initially were assembled sounds like an absurd way of saying it, but they were a foundation of the Protector races. So initially they consisted of trolls, dwarves, dracons, and Ijati. Kirindrek not so much because of the distance, although there was the occasional one that still made their way down. And goblins and ogres never really came into it. Other elven factions again never really came into it. So those were the main ones, but most notably it was Dracons and Trolls who dedicated troops to the Temple Guard. One of the few times that the two factions actually properly got along, because it was less about magic. In a lot of cases, whilst the Temple Guard did have access to magic and enchanters, their actual whole force was actually very limited in how many they had. But the influence of the enchanter is actually named after the sort of troops that you have, and if you see the image on your right, it is an image of an emerald blade, one of the sword wielders of the Temple Guard. Alongside them you had the obsidian phalanx, the ruby bows, feldspar axes, which is interesting because they kind of clash with another force of the feldspar order there. But you didn't have any per se when it came to Sapphire, because the nature of Sapphire is it's meant to be healing and things, so you didn't really get any particular force for that. But the role of the Temple Guard was partly to watch over Destinal, something that the Isle of Tartak also served as, but beyond that they also essentially served as like a guiding factor for various places. They didn't really have a navy per se, again the limitation, but whenever they required it, the humans of Destinal from the lands of Cafaltir, Talamarith, or later houses Matten, Tartak, Letmos, and Cafal, were perfectly willing to pass over ships to allow them to cross. They are a noble order, so any sort of internal squabbling within Destinal they never really took a part of. They didn't involve themselves in the atrocities of sorrow. But when it comes to both taking on the forces of Nagrasak and Sinethia, as well as pirates every now and then, they were perfectly willing to participate. And the Temple Guard in themselves are led by one figure at a time, a figure who is voted in, nominated. There is no hereditary nature to it. You've had two particular High Wardens of note, Zirin, who existed during Tonrif's War, and a little bit beyond that, and then you also had Jaith, who for quite some time before the trilogy and within parts of the trilogy he is the leader. And one of the notable things about the leader is it's one of the few times you see a sort of leader or something use a fairly aggressive weapon, because they have a ceremonial sort of flail that they use as their main weapon. But again, it's the nature of who they fight against. Their priority is fighting, well, Dark Elves, Ogres, but primarily demons. So you need something that's got a lot of strength behind it to succeed. And the most notable feat so far in the lore that the Temple Guard have actually had actually involves Tartak. Within Tonrif's War, whilst Tonrif over here was waging war on the Dracons on the Wood Elves and had started to try and push in, he had already taken half of Ravlaror, had attempted to land in the Salbanoth, but had been repelled by Tarasil and the Wood Elves. Whilst all of that was going on, Talamarith's forces were actually driven out of Tartak by a force of Dark Elves. And for a time, it was being used as a mustering ground, prepared to launch more attacks, but before that could actually happen, a combined force of Cafaltir, Talamarith, and Temple Guard went over and drove the Dark Elves out after a brutal couple of battles. And the Temple Guard then took actual charge and they took over the Watch of Tartak and even took over the occupation of the Eastern Shores, so this entire, almost like triangle, was controlled by the Temple Guard. And in terms of like strength or empire building or things like that, that's the strongest they ever got, is occupying those three lands, and it was only on a temporary basis. They were working in conjunction with the Ajati for a lot of it. They participated during Gallicaros when Sinethia attempted a couple of assaults on Cafaltir. There were demon forces that broke through and scattered throughout the lands, and the Temple Guard, in combination with the Feldspar Summit, ended up using their horsemen to essentially hunt down any demons that escaped. They are a interesting force, to say the least. The Arios Sparrowhelm story, one that is not been written yet, but is hopefully coming soon. The Temple Guard were also quite heavily involved in that. It was a specific force of Temple Guard, one of the very few times that they actually get sent outside of Destinal, and they got sent to Arisen to essentially hunt down who they thought was Arios, but turned out to actually be an imposter, down before he cut more of a swath through the Great Steppe. They worked again in conjunction with the Kirindrek and the Ajati, and even a couple of the Sparrowhawks for that. They the thing to note about all of them is that whilst they are a noble order, they are actually still quite sizable. They are certainly more sizable than the Feldspar Order or the or they're probably on par with the Marexit Wardens. But it was actually within Gleria's sacrifice that they had a more pivotal role based around the temple itself. The temple was a place of training, a place of sort of worship and watch and everything. But after Gleria's sacrifice, after some searching, it actually ended up becoming the home to the Drakes. When Glearia sacrificed herself, it spawned out the Dragons and the Drakes. And the Drakes were incredibly significant. There was one of essentially each form of magic that was known to Destiny and all of that, so no corruptive or Raygate. But this became their sort of area of protection where they were safeguarded from prying eyes, and it became a chief duty of them, and it is very notable because Gleria's sacrifice, up until the books, is the last time that they have a notable role. After that, they essentially completely withdraw within the temple lands itself and don't become isolationist, but they become a lot more limited on how much they are willing to expand outward. They become a lot more like the Oasis defenders of the Trolls. And their whole... they are the finest warriors that Destinal has to offer, and I note that I say Destinal there because by the time of the books, because of everything else that happened, whilst there are still a few Dracons scattered about, there are no longer really much any Trolls or Agility or Dwarves or Wood Elves in there. The Wood Elves were barely part of it anyway, but aside from a few noted characters. So it was primarily consistent of humans from then on, and whilst all humans dedicated forces to it, some of the houses at the time were more focused than others. House Matten and House Cathalt were the two most notable, although House Rovcat also sent quite a few. So the actual, it's sad to say this, but the sort of quality did actually kind of diminish, but it was still, they were still superior to pretty much any other force on Destinal at that time, and they did continue to do so as well. Their role throughout all of Aphalas changes quite a bit, but it is a land that they sort of benefit from the geography and I guess the geology of it, because the whole landscape and everything makes it quite easy to protect. They have had some notable roles that have involved Losikoth, but has been mainly being charged with helping evacuations and things like that. Like most others, they did participate in the final battle of Gallicaros as well. But when it comes to other elements, and obviously I'm not going to talk after the books, otherwise that would be major spoilers. They do play their role quite significantly. They did have some run-ins in the lead up to Gallicaros with Yitzhak, and that was sort of notable because if any of the goblins were ever to become Temple Guard, it would have been the Northern Haraketh goblins, but then they all kind of got wiped out, so that didn't really happen. They have next to no contact with the Feinu, the humans of Arisen. There's literally just like no contact there. But there is one other thing that I would like to add in this part, and it's more focused less on the Temple Guard, but it's arguably like one of the best videos where I can explain this. and it is a network. And I wish I had something where I could like annotate a line, but I'm not on the right thing to be able to do that, I don't think. Unless I can do it like here. That works. Right, so... But annoyingly you are not zoomed in. Why would you do that? Why would you change it to there and then not let me zoom in? Okay, well, it's going to be a bit fuzzy, but effectively, where's Callus 10 here? There is a network of tunnels that connect the Temple of Glearia to the Spira Callus Tenir to the Temple of Naros. And these are, it's going to sound very weird, but these are essentially like, they're meant to be quick response kind of battles or easy evacuation, especially for the likes of Naros and Callus Tenir. And the network is meant to be relatively secretive. It is sometimes more noted than others, and there are very few people throughout all of Aphalas that actually know of it. The Wood Elves themselves only became aware of it when they and the Forest Dwarves ended up seeking refuge in the Silabeth. The humans are relatively clueless about it. The Dark Elves hear rumours, but not much. Nagrasak knows of it, but the demons don't. And it is arguable, or it is rumoured, should I say, that once there were actually more tunnels as well. One leading to somewhere in the Arak Nyleth, one potentially leading to Arasin, and one leading to Baraloth in Galakaros, but notably none in Onarkivris. But whether those are true or not, who knows? Well, you'll find out eventually. There was also, and this is actually a notable one, there is no tunnel connection to the Storm Peak despite its significance, or the Narrakon Inn here. So there are a lot of notable places that are not tied to it. Mainly because at the time, a lot of these places didn't exist, but the temples and Callus Tenir did. The Temple Guard were an interesting creation to say the least. Their role is not as secretive as some others, but then it again is also not. Because for quite some time and under a lot of High Wardens, they were very active and also expansive, like they were willing to go out and help, but the more time went on, the more sort of reclusive they became, and when the Drakes came along, their priority completely shifted. And it's interesting because their whole task is to help defend Aphalas, but by defending the Drakes they are doing that, because the Drakes are very, very significant. But I would say for the time being that is all for now. A lot of these order ones and things, there will be more to discuss when there is, well, firstly when the books are more aware, and also when the others are released and everything, and more development in the world building. But the Temple Guard are still strong. They, in terms of combat worthiness, like they can. So when it comes to the combat style and everything like that, trolls, dark elves, and humans are sort of all on a similar kind of par. The Temple Guard are just a bit better than them. Well, Dracons as well. Dracons are in that mix as well. Sorry, I'm just scrolling around the map wondering, it's like, what's next? But I would also like to use the ending of this to just make a mention that there are some Aphalas short stories in the works, and I am intending on getting them done, sorted, and hopefully released. They will be... I did have a name for it, and I've got the name jotted down, but it's escaping me at the moment, but they will be... There's two like sets that I'm wanting to do. There is the Temple Guard, no, not the Temple Guard, the Aphalas ones, and then there are Napoleonic short stories. So those two will hopefully be released, and I don't know, I might release them as singular things, or I might do it as like 2 and 2 and 2, possibly, and then do like a full volume. That could be a nice way of doing it. And I know that this last note is going to be completely off subject, but I've been watching a lot of Marvel stuff recently with the lead up to the films and everything, and it's got me seriously thinking about some inspiration that I've taken from the whole statue in the ocean things for not so much Trilogy, but for Soul of the Gem, ironically. But whether I can do something with that or not, I'll have to just think and wait and see. But anyway, that is enough jabbering from me, so thank you all very much for watching. Please do comment, like and subscribe. Please do check out the links in the description. As you saw at the start of this video, providing I did the right intro, there is a discount going on the Ko-fi page, so please do feel free to go over there and pick up one of the ebooks. As obviously I want all the books to be picked up and loved and all the rest of it, but the dyspraxia one especially, we've got Dyspraxia Awareness Week happening next month, so if I could get more build up to it, and obviously I'm also, and well, I say obviously, also I am pricing that one a bit differently, so it works out a bit different to the others. But yeah, that one is personally important to me, so but thank you very much, and until next time, welcome to the Kingdom of Aphalas and the world of Fellow Mind books. And I shall see you later.